Most leaders think their job is to have all the answers, but the leaders we actually want to follow usually have something else. They stay curious. They ask the questions that unlocks the real problem. They notice what everyone else skips, and they turn uncertainty into momentum. Today, we are getting practical about how curiosity upgrades your leadership, your team culture, and honestly, your whole life. Welcome back to AIBiz, the show where we make big ideas usable without getting overly technical. I am Yusuf, and today my guest is Tyler Chisholm, entrepreneur, podcast host, and author of Curious as Hell. Someone who's built a reputation around asking better questions and building better businesses because of it. We are talking about the power of curiosity and how it can help you lead through change, build stronger teams, and make sharper decisions when the path is not obvious. With that, I welcome Tyler to the show.
Yusuf, thank you very much. That was a lovely introduction. Happy to be here.
Thank you so much, sir. And before we get into the frameworks, I'm curious. When did you personally realize curiosity wasn't just a personality trait, but a leadership skill you could actually build?
I would say I will give full credit to my journey as a podcast host. Early in my podcast career, when a good friend of mine convinced me, led me, motivated, pushed me into starting a podcast about economic transformation happening across Western Canada. We were at a period of time when there was a lot of upheaval in our economy. The energy sector was struggling. But yet there was still a lot of positive things happening in our community. And a very good friend of mine, a senior business leader, pushed me and said, Tyler, we need a podcast in this city that bridges the gaps between who's solving the problems and who's having the problems, because I don't think those people are talking to each other. And I said no at first, because I had a bit of imposter syndrome. I had a bit of the, who am I to talk to these senior leaders, venture capitalists, leaders of large oil firms? I didn't think I was up to the task. And he convinced me and I agreed. But yet that feeling of imposter syndrome didn't go away, which I think is something that a lot of leaders struggle with. But as the day approached, I caught myself going, why do I have imposter syndrome? Is it because I think I have to know more than the guest? That's ridiculous. What if I just show up curious? What if I just show up to make the guest the hero? And then the next people that will be the hero is the audience that gets to hear the story. And then I get to just be part of the journey. I made it not about me, and curiosity was the filter I used to go, well, I'm just going to show up. I don't even know if I called it curiosity yet. I just showed up thinking I'm going to make the guest the hero. I'm going to show up with questions, not answers, because they have all the answers. And it completely opened the door to me to over 600 episodes with senior business leaders across Canada and across, of course, North America. And every episode I got to practice being curious. And all of a sudden, one day I woke up and went, wait a second, why aren't I using this to the same degree with my leadership team? And that's when the light bulb went off.
Mm. Wow. And I'm taking notes as a podcast host just to weeks.
It was what allowed me to have conversations, the freedom to have conversations with almost anyone, because for me to think I knew more about them was ridiculous, but to give myself permission to just show up curious while still doing my research, it completely opened the door to conversations that I would arguably kind of change my trajectory as a leader and as a human being.
A lot of leaders here be curious, and it means being soft, uncertain, or not decisive. In your experience, what do people misunderstand about curiosity in leadership?
I think one of the key things that I always want to talk about is that this is curiosity in the realm of business. I think curiosity as a life skill is mandatory and I think is amazing. It can be very fun. It could be very playful. But I joke often, Yusuf, if you and I were going to go to a movie tonight at 8, and you wanted to go to one movie and I wanted to go to another movie, and I was really curious what you cared about, you were curious what I cared about. But if we didn't decide which movie we're going to go to, we missed the movie. And that's what happens in business. So I do not believe that curiosity is a replacement for leadership and to your question, decisiveness. I think it's how you go about gathering more information, how you be more inclusive with your team, so that when you, as the leader, if that's your role, sooner or later, someone has to make a decision. You can't just keep going around and around for the sake of curiosity. And I think that's the difference of like, oh, I'm just going to be curious. It doesn't mean we're not going to get to a point where, as a leader, I have to make a call. And my team might feel like, that's not the direction I want to go, but I still want them to know that they were heard throughout the process. And the real argument is I'm probably going to, as a leader, have heard something that made me go, wait a second, I thought this was blue, but really it's actually a bit yellow. If I just would have went forward and made that decision right away and chose blue, I might have chosen correctly, but it might be somewhere in between. By including my team in that and being curious enough to check myself when I'm reacting versus reflecting, when I'm being manipulated by my own bias, it's not as you're not superseding the need to still make decisions, but I think how you can get there with curiosity is a lot more inclusive and often will get you to better answers.
What are the things that you think blocks that curiosity?
For me, the first one I believe is self, being self-curious. Am I self-aware enough? Am I willing to say I don't know? And for many leaders, that's almost like it feels like a death sentence. And I'll be honest, at many organizations that I've run into, as a CEO of a marketing firm, we are always in service of our clients. We're a service company that does marketing. So I find myself in a lot of boardrooms when I watch and I listen and I look around and I go, wow, it's not really safe here to say that you don't know the answer. It's not safe here to not speak really confidently and speak very directly because that's how the person who stands at the front of the room or who sits at the head of the table, they talk. If that individual or me as a leader, I'm not willing to say, wow, that's a great question. I don't know. What do you think? Or you know what, in my experience, I've seen it work this way. I wonder what it would be like if it worked the opposite way. So again, it's not saying that you don't have an opinion that you can't chime in, but be okay that your opinion is just your opinion. It's your perspective. That's often filtered by your experience, that's full of bias. But if there isn't a willingness to be vulnerable and be a little bit, insecure, if you will, without mapping that or over mapping that with like bold confidence and aggressive leadership traits that we've all seen in movies in Hollywood. I think that's the first step that it starts in an organization is being able to model it with yourself and being okay as a leader to say you don't know and to not be certain. And I think that's one of the things that holds so many of us back for a variety of reasons that only you know as an individual listening to this right now.
Yeah, curiosity is easy when you feel safe,
Yes.
and it's hard when your nervous system is in survival mode. You cannot be curious. And
100 that's a very good point. If you're in a sympathetic nervous system response, fight or flight, curiosity, it's almost like you don't have time because you need to run away from the tiger. But if your parasympathetic nervous system, the strategic to take 3 breaths, taking 3 breaths can make you a lot more curious. That's not a curious breathing pattern. Sometimes I'm curious for a second, the tiger's coming, I need to run away. If we're not trying to calm the tigers in our boardrooms, curiosity is gonna have a hard time showing up for you or anyone else on your team. That's a really good point.
and how can a leader tell the difference between my team isn't curious and my team doesn't feel safe to be curious?
Very good question. I think one is easy to observe, the other ones you have to investigate a little bit further. If, if you listen to this podcast and you're a leader and you decide to show up in your boardroom and maybe not talk for a little bit, maybe not jump in with the answers, maybe not try to quote unquote solve the problem or already come in with the problem solved. And you watch your team not really speak up. You watch your team not ask questions. You watch people that are willing to contradict you. And you like, this is a risky move. But as a leader, sometimes talk a little bit less or go, hey guys, here's what I think. Please, let's play red team. Let's say blue team, red team. I'm going to say an idea and I want you to give me the counter idea. And if everybody just sits there and stares at their hands, you probably have a low degree of psychological safety. I think you can do a lot of coaching and you can do a lot of analysis and fill out forms and do company surveys. If you sit in the corner of your own boardroom, so imagine you're in the room with your team, psychologically put yourself up in the corner and observe that room. And if you're doing most of the talking, and when it comes to asking questions, people are agreeing with you, they're not challenging you. Curiosity might be a low on the scale, and there might be a low degree of safety in that room. And yes, I'm putting that responsibility on you as the leader because that's part of your job to set the tone, and it starts with you.
Yeah, indeed. When curiosity is missing inside a team, what are the symptoms that show up first? Like what a founder would or manager notice in the week to week basis?
Oh, what a great question. The speed at which we jump to answers, the speed at which the low level of dissent. I think if you're in a startup or in a founder environment, how quickly you fall in love with a problem without always understanding the customer's version of that problem, and how quick you all go, "Yeah, this is great. We love it." But did anyone talk to the customer? How quickly are we running forward with patches, with fixes, with modifications to our product that were never really stress tested against the customer need? Something I heard from a founder, a mature founder, I will constantly like, because they said in their early days, they fell in love with their version of the problem. But later in their career, they realized they needed to start falling in love with their customer's version of the problem. If you have a team that's like, well, we know better, we know more than our customers know. And there's a balance there because sometimes if you're pushing an innovation or doing something that's new in the market, the customer doesn't know what they don't know, but you still want to really understand the dynamics of what they're going through. And if you're not seeing that in your team and you're seeing your product engineers and your more technical, your subject matter experts that have been prized their entire careers for how smart they are and how much technically they know, that ability to go, well, this is what we think. And we need to really go stress test this, or we need to pull up a really simple MVP so we can test it. That's where you're seeing curiosity or not. And it doesn't mean they're not curious about the technology or the solution or the marketplace, but are they taking it to a level that they're getting opinions that are outside of themselves? That's where I think curiosity can become a superpower. It's always present to a certain degree. It's just how much is it helping you? Or is it just a nice to have, or has it become a core comp or a have to have for your organization?
Mm. Give us a simple practice. If a leader wants to become more curious in a measurable way, what's a small daily or weekly habit that they can actually start practicing and that actually sticks?
Oh, but the sticks part is the tricky one, Yusuf.
Yeah.
We'll get into the psychology of atomic habits and how to change that 1 degree. Something that I'm working on and something that I've set for myself in 26. I'll give you two strategies. When am I reacting versus reflecting? And that's when I'm really catching myself. Someone sends me email is a fantastic place to do this in because you don't have to respond right away, but sometimes you feel really inspired to respond right away. But like the phone rings, you answer it, someone asks you a question, it's hard to say, give me 5 minutes, I'll call you back. You can. But with an email, this is my initial response. I go, wait, 5 minutes from now, is that still my response? What was my bias? What was I reacting to? What was my need to swoop in and have an answer as quickly as I could? That's something I'm doing. And it's a quick little, the 5 minute react versus reflect test. And I think that's something any leader can do right now immediately, because as you and I are talking and as somebody's listening, their inbox is filling up or their Slack channel or their DMs or whatever the case may be. Something that I did when I really was starting to explore curiosity as a personal character trait and I was playing around with it, I actually had a piece of paper on my desk and I drew a line down the middle. And I put two columns. And on the left column, I did takeaway. On the right column, I did add. And every time I finished a call, I would identify what behaviors took away from my outcome. Did I jump in too quickly? Did I allow my team chance to chime in? Did I already show up with an answer versus I showed up really open? I showed up really, and the theme that started to show up for me is whenever I showed up curious, I got better results. And these were quantitative slash qualitative metrics. But when you're observing yourself on that journey, it's hard to deny after 3, 4 weeks of going, wow, when I acted this way, I got a better outcome. Very quickly, you start to call your own bluff on your own behavior. So self-observation and reflection are what both these are based on. One is the 5 minute react versus reflect test, really fast, really easy to do. You can do it right now when you stop listening. The other one takes a little bit more effort. And after about 6 weeks of doing it, and it was during COVID, so I was on virtual calls all the time. So 4 or 5 calls a day, you're getting a lot of data. You're getting a lot of personal observation. And very quickly did I see that curious Tyler got a lot better results than jump to the conclusion Tyler as a leader.
Okay. I like that because it's observable. People can actually feel the difference around them.
Yes. And
Even
if you have trusted members of your team, do it for a couple weeks and then tell them what you're doing and then ask them and say, I'm doing this, but if I can get your feedback, that would be really helpful. That takes a lot of trust and it takes a little bit of vulnerability, but we all have individuals on our team that we know really well. Like I have someone on my team I've been working with for about 10 years. She knows what I'm going to say before I say it. So when I start acting differently, she's like, hey, I noticed you're showing up a little bit differently. What's going on with you? So she's my mirror, if you will.
even the most curious leaders get shut down sometimes. They ask a genuine question and the room gets defensive, or the question is taken as criticism.
Yeah.
What do you do in that moment?
I think, well, one, it's about what you did before that day. When you've got to ask that hard question, and there's a lot of, it's the new year. So I'm seeing a lot of posts on how to have difficult conversations and how to coach your
Mhm.
team. I know that there's always a first conversation, but oftentimes the hard conversation today is going to be a lot easier because of all the small conversations I had before that. So when I walk into a room with my team, not only do I hope that I've already created an environment with a high degree of psychological safety and a high degree of emotional intelligence, but there's always that moment, and it's where I like to use softeners. Like, hey guys, I'm going to ask a question today. It might feel uncomfortable, but that's okay. That's part of the question. And there's no wrong answers. Let's just play around with it. I'm curious. I wonder what it would be like if we looked at this situation completely differently and we actually took ourselves out of it and we were advising a company that was going through our challenge. What advice would we give them? Oh, what it does is it opens up the mind and creates possibility versus why did we do it this way? Ooh, I'm quite defensive immediately. Yusuf, why did you act that way in front of that client last week? Oh, why did you act that way in a podcast? I can't believe you did that. And sometimes that's how leaders give feedback with like, hey guys, I always want to separate the issue from the individual. If we as a team have been doing something that's, and as a leader, sometimes you go, wow, we're kind of getting in our own way here. We're being inefficient as a team. Creating a scenario, putting it forward, allow your team to chime in, but make it safe. Make people, allow people not to feel attacked while also being creative. Like, what would it be like if? I'm curious. Suppose that we did this completely differently. Let's just play around with what that might look like. What things do we assume must be true that if they weren't true, we would act completely differently? I've done this in the room so many times, and it sparks. It takes a few minutes. It's not always instant. It can sound a little bit fluffy, but it's amazing. Even try this when someone says, "I don't know, I can't, I don't have an answer." What would it be like if you did? And their brain goes, "Oh, possibility, openness, no threats. I feel safe." Boom, and then they blurt something out. If you create a little bit of space for people, it's amazing what will show up to fill that.
Yeah, Yeah, that's important because curiosity without care can feel like interrogation.
It absolutely can. Mhm.
Yeah. So,
Softeners, something I talk about in the book very extensively and something I learned years ago with more, I believe as leaders, we're coaches above all else. And if we're not there to help people get the best out of I heard also a really good comment I'm going to share with you. Before you give feedback, ask yourself a powerful question. Am I trying to help that person be a better version of themselves, or am I trying to make them more like me? And I think that's a very powerful question as a leader because oftentimes we rise through the ranks to leadership because of technical skills, because of deep proficiency, our expertise, especially in the STEM world, everything is about how good you are at your task. But all of a sudden now, your job is to make everyone around you better at being them, not be more like you. And anytime that someone legitimately feels you're trying to help them be a better version of themselves, I believe that there's a sense of openness and trust that starts to build, takes time, doesn't happen overnight. But if all my feedback is just to make you do it more the way I did it, that coaching relationship is going to and not be maybe quite so connected.
yeah. Tyler, if people want to learn more about your work and the book Curious as Hell, where should they go?
Please go check out tylerchisholm.com. My team and I have put together a website that I'm really proud of because it's chock full of information. There's articles, there's podcast conversations, there's link to the book. There's all these philosophies around curiosity because I believe that it's not you have it or you don't. I believe it's a practice. I believe it can start very small and it can grow from, strategic self curiosity to relational all the way to strategic, which is I think where a lot of leaders want to be, but you have to start with yourself. So the website does a really good job of kind of allowing you to go on that journey and meet curiosity kind of where you are, not where it is. That's the beauty of it. It's a very, very flexible character trait.
Awesome. We'll make sure to post those links in the show notes.
Yusuf, thank you very much for your great questions today.
Thank you so much. I just have a small request. If you have any last message that you want to leave us with.
Oh, wow, fabulous. What would be my last message? Try it on. Curiosity in your personal life, curiosity in your relationships, curiosity at the level of business and at the most senior level of thinking through problems in a world where every single leader is being expected to have answers for something that no one has answers to. Oh, I wonder what the future is going to look like. I don't know. What's going to be the latest release of AI in 3 months? understand where you sit as an organization and what you value, and then be okay with curiosity filling up that extra space because certainty is a myth. Certainty is a pressure putting on yourself as a leader that's not realistic and it's not realistic for your team, but you've got to create permission for your team to be curious and it starts with you.
Yeah. All right. That is it for the episode of AI Base. And if this conversation sparked something, don't just nod along. Pick one question you heard today and use it in a real conversation this week with your team, your partner, your kid, or yourself. Because better questions do not just create better answers, they create better outcomes.
Nice.
I am Yusuf, and I thank all my listeners for their time and my wonderful, amazing, and curious guest, Tyler Chisholm, for his answers, for his wisdom, and his curiosity. And I'll see you in the next episode.